Good evening, and we are back here with Saving Lives. We've had a couple weeks off, but now we're back full throttle, and I just love that song. We have Art over there with the controls.
Hello.
And then I have two special guests with me today. I have Aiden and Andrew. So Aiden, why don't you introduce yourself first?
I'm Aiden, I'm an addict.
Hi, Aiden.
Aiden, I'm Andrew, I'm an addict.
Hey, Andrew. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
I've asked them a couple times to come up here, and with the scheduling conflict, it's just always been a little bit of a struggle.
When you show up outside of their work and, they have no choice but to get in your car.
Exactly. And
She didn't tell you that that's what she's been doing?
Yeah, pretty much been like
Called
stalking them.
kidnapping.
Yep. But it's great. That they're both here. They're a huge part of my recovery.
Awesome.
And I like to think of them as like, I don't know, not like recovery gurus, but like kind of.
I'll take that. Yeah, I'll take that.
And
Not a bad thing in today's world.
exactly. So let's start with Andrew. Do you want to give a little bit about what you're doing now? We'd like to talk about more on the recovery end here, but you can share a little bit about what you do now.
Maybe a little bit of kind of like my story.
Yeah.
How I got here. Yeah, absolutely. Been a long journey, that's for sure. My story includes a lot of relapses. And that's just for me. So I guess a little bit about what brought me here, right? I had a fairly normal upbringing in a suburban neighborhood outside of Philadelphia, and just started realizing problems in life, at a young age, and found ways to cope with them, throughout middle school and high school. And, people have asked me over time, they say, a lot of my friends actually who aren't in the rooms have said, like, do you regret any of the decisions that you made? And quite honestly, I don't, because my decisions have brought me to where I am today in a room with my two good friends in recovery, on some new age radio station, which I think is sexy as hell for recovery.
Yep, absolutely.
And a business owner, which is pretty cool, right? Just continuing to do the next best thing every day.
We're the only 24-hour, 365 recovery
And then
radio
some.
station around.
That's amazing.
And it's truly beautiful. And how about you,
Hoping it's
Aiden?
going to get me into Warped Tour.
And Aiden, what brings you to being able to show up here on a recovery radio show?
Absolutely. It's kind of similar to Andrew, had a very much normal upbringing, school, sports, that kind of thing, suburban life. Same kind of thing. Found drugs at a pretty early age. Had addict tendencies before I had discovered drugs, and was on the road to drugs before I even knew what they were. So eventually found my way there, and my life really took a U-turn away from all those kind of goals that I had set for myself. College, sports, all of those things led me to some pretty awful places. And at the end of the road, I was, had nowhere else to go but treatment. And since I've found recovery, have not found a reason to leave. And it's been 891 days. And,
So amazing.
here we are.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
I wish we had the little fart button now that we talked about. Just to add that in there, dude.
That would have been great.
Yeah.
I can help you.
Oh, we
We were
could get the
talking-
sound effects going.
Yeah,
we were
Oh,
talking about
us
it on
three
the
would
way
be
here.
really bad with that. Don't put that in
Yeah,
front of
don't
us.
even show.
Yeah. Well, you got 3 Aryans here tonight,
Yeah.
so sky's the limit. But that is
God.
incredible. And Aiden, you're in grad school right now. You are practicing.
Heading to grad school, but yeah, absolutely.
Close enough. I like to reach a little further.
Yeah,
you're going to be
definitely.
in grad school.
Yeah, definitely. And I was actually talking with someone about this the other night, just about how addicts are so geared toward instant gratification in everything that we do. And that's still very much true of my life now. But the whole process of, high school, college, grad school, and then working is the longest process of delayed gratification ever. And it's so counter to everything that I'm comfortable with. But, it's the same kind of principles that I apply to recovery, I've applied here. And if I figured that, my whole teenage and young adult life was geared toward drugs, I can probably reconfigure myself to approach school and, life and work in the same way that I approach recovery.
And live that quote unquote normal life that a lot of people talk about. Because I'm I don't know how people actually could like do their daily like living without some form of recovery. I mean, I don't know. But if anybody has any insight and wants to call in, our number is 609-241-7103. And I'm getting a little bit better with delivering that phone number, which is great.
As they're plastered everywhere.
Well, that is why. Because oh, that's perfect.
Oh, we got the sound effects now. This is going to go in a weird direction.
It's going to be great. But
I also think it's worth noting, though, that Aiden is also studying to be a lawyer, a practicing attorney, which I really do think it's especially in New Jersey with the stuff that I've read and everything that's going on in Washington, and especially Christie and their opiate approach here in New Jersey specifically. And I think that a lot of what he needs to tailor some stuff to is the hope here, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny you should say that, because do you know who I'm meeting with tomorrow morning in our office?
Are you seriously?
Really? That's spectacular.
Yeah.
And I truly think it's a wonderful thing what they're doing. But whenever someone asks me about the approach there, I say, instead of focusing on all the negatives, because there's a ton of negatives associated with recovery, right? There's still this stigma. Focus on the hope, right? Like, tell people about the basic text. Tell people about recovering addicts who have 891 days clean who are studying to be an attorney.
If you go to Reach New Jersey, and actually starting to do that part right now, but people are getting fed up with here and I mean, they need to have like several different commercials to play, not the same one over and over again. So that's what I'm going to tell him tomorrow. You know what I mean, when I meet him. But they also have, if you scroll to the bottom of reachnj.gov, there's videos, and Kevin, our founder for City of Angels, and his wife, who, they lost their son, which is, how this all came about, did their video telling their story. And whenever we go out and do speaking engagements, which is several times a week, and even when we, like Tuesday, we're going to do high school kids in Ocean County.
Oh, that's great.
70 of them. We show them that movie because it's giving you that parent's perspective of losing a child. You know what I mean? But not sitting there and not doing anything about it. I mean, they really tried to make a difference in where it goes. But that's absolutely right. And I think that's part of why he's coming to our office tomorrow.
To hear the hope.
Because we're going to have parents, we're going to have recovery addicts, we're going to have a lot of different people there, you know what I mean, that could give him a perspective.
Yeah, that's spectacular. I think that's an approach that absolutely has to be taken, because you hear about all the negatives and you want to hear about yes, there's a loss, but then there's also hope here too.
Absolutely.
Right?
And that's why I agreed to do this in the first place too, was because there's so many people it's swept under the rug, and every time you turn on the TV or the news, you hear about this epidemic and someone dying. Well, there's so many people that are afraid to just be like, hey, look, I struggled, but I came out of it, and I'm in recovery. And with you guys being here too, it just shows that like there are people out there that are willing to share the hope. Hey, like, been there, done that, did some crazy stuff, lived through it, and now I live a life beyond my wildest dreams.
Yeah, I was just going to say the life beyond the wildest dreams aspect, and I think, you and I both very much share that, because life beyond my wildest dreams for me for a long time was a minimal existence, to say the least. And anything I have now is just a result of this program, and really is a life beyond the wildest dream. So anything that happens tomorrow was not planned on.
Oh, not by any means. The life that I'm living now is, I couldn't have guessed it.
Flying by the seat of my pants.
Yeah, exactly. 5 years ago, not a chance I would have been able to say that this is where I thought I would be.
Did you even
starting
want to
with
live?
Starting with alive, right?
Right.
Yeah, great point. Starting with the fact that I didn't think I would even be here today.
Right. That's awesome.
Yes.
I love it.
Thank God.
I love it. That was perfect.
Don't put those in front of me, though. The show will get weird.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's great. And like, even to like where you guys are at, like, there's some years of recovery in this room right now. And I remember like,
which is crazy just to even say.
yeah, I know. I'm like thinking, I'm like,
You would
wow.
have never guessed this. How long have you both been in recovery?
So we were talking about this on the way out. So a strange thing about Aiden and I is we're actually the same person. Our birthdays are
true.
days apart. Our clean dates are days apart. We look alike, as I'm sure you can all hear over the radio. So yeah, it
Well,
is
no, they
pretty.
can
Watch it on
see it.
YouTube
They can
tomorrow.
see
Oh,
it.
that's very true.
They can see it on YouTube, yeah.
But yeah, so we're both coming up on 30 months here. So
Brother from another mother.
yeah.
Awesome, man. So, 3 years ago, you would have never pictured yourself sitting here talking about recovery.
Not a chance.
I
No.
wasn't even really into taking showers. So, being
Well,
dressed
where
in
I-
somewhere else is nice.
I have two daughters who, one who's going through rehab right now and one who's about 18 months clean now, I guess.
Oh, that's good.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
So-
And the fact that your other daughter was able to make it to rehab, because the stuff out there, they keep saying it, it's the epidemic, blah, blah, blah. But it's it's not just heroin. It is the fentanyl and carfentanil and God knows what else. It is, people are dropping like flies. And, there's a buddy of ours that just isn't getting it right now. And, he's back in treatment. Thank God he's back in treatment.
And it's so hard. I'd imagine for you being in recovery to go why can't you get it? You know what I mean? Look at us. You could be part of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think half of me says that, right? Because the half of me still lives sometimes in my old self where I'm like, come on, just come join us, please. It's beautiful on this side. And then the other half of me identifies with it, right? Where I remember that struggle. I don't forget that struggle for a day that goes by. I remember what it's like to be in the grip.
And that's what my daughter said, the same thing. My oldest, and the first one that went through it, she said, I don't ever want to go through that again. It was so hard to detox and get rehab and get it literally took well over a year for her, to come back and see her as the old person that she was. I called her Reagan from The Exorcist when she was in her because that wasn't my daughter. You know what I mean? That was somebody I didn't know. But it's great to see people come back, you know what I mean? And with a new zest for life and enjoying all the things that, you can just it's almost like I have a 9-month-old granddaughter, and to watch her suck everything in, watching somebody in recovery for a while, it's like the same thing. It's like you're being born again. And you're just taking in everything.
You see that twinkle in their eyes and the light come back in their face. And sometimes it's hard to see it in yourself. I've noticed it in other people before I could actually see it myself. And I know for a long time, I couldn't look in the mirror. And then there's some days where I'm like, damn, I look good. It's it's the whole just crazy, just growing into this new way of life. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And as far as with the meeting tomorrow, is it stuff that's going on with, are they trying to come up with a bill or?
Actually, he's kind of been doing his tour.
Right.
He started out, he goes and visits treatment facilities and talks to the staff and the clinicians and the executive directors.
Right. And the fact that he does that and cares enough about it is tremendous.
What he's doing is truly, I give him a lot of credit. This is, in my opinion, with everything that's going on in the administration, the hardest thing to talk about is the epidemic, right? It's what's really killing everyone right now. It's not just killing individuals, right? This is a disease that affects everybody. It destroys the people around them.
It destroys their family.
It really does.
It can. It doesn't have to. You know what I mean? And that's where, with City of Angels, we come in too. When your loved one is off getting help, you need to be going to help. You need to be going to get a meeting. You need to educate yourself and learn not to enable, and all those things. I went through that. You need to educate yourself if you're not already educated. You know what I mean? And there's so many resources available today, you know what I mean, to learn more about it. Those police stations and governments and counties and, you know what I mean? The federal government, everybody is trying to battle this disease. And and it takes a village, right?
And no, it really does. And I think it's interesting because Philadelphia is not too far from here, right? But the approaches are different. Philadelphia, you have encampments down in North Philly right now. And the whole debate is the railroad owns the spot where all the using's taking place on the tracks, right, down in North Philly. And the whole argument is the railroad needs to pay to clean this up. And if they pay to clean this up and they build these fences, people aren't going to come back. But that's not the approach. The approach needs to be the face of the location, right? The Christies of the world to come out and say, look at this hope here, right? Look at this literature, look at this big book, look at this basic text. There are stories here of people who've gone to those encampments and come out the other side. This isn't about building a fence, it's about taking them down and really facing it head on. And I really appreciate that. And there's a huge difference between the approaches here, and that's why I do give it a lot of credit, because not many places are taking that approach, saying let's get to the forefront of this, right? Stop playing defense, start playing offense.
We're still getting people though. We're making strides. 9 years ago, we couldn't get a letter to the editor in the newspaper. I mean, now we're getting specials and
Yep.
news stories and
Right.
government officials. I mean, I would have never told you 3 years ago Governor Christie was going to be sitting in our little rinky-dink, you know what I mean, old decommissioned school. That's a recovery center, in Hamilton. It's about 15 minutes from here. But that's going to happen tomorrow.
That's
You know what I mean?
spectacular.
And hopefully, we have a wide range of people we invited to sit at that table, so that he can hear a lot of different perspectives from not just the treatment centers. Now he's going to hear from the parents. You know what I mean? And even when we talk to parents, it's like, hey, I'm not a professional. I'm a dad. You know what I mean? I can only tell you what I know. You know what I mean? And you can take it for what
And
it's worth.
I wonder too, has he heard from actual addicts?
Well, you
that
hear
are-
all-
that are-
yeah, oh yeah,
Absolutely.
He's got,
Because I'm like, maybe we should show
you
up.
can hear the commercials on the radio.
Yeah,
right now. As a
well,
matter of
yeah.
fact, the one thing I want to ask him tomorrow is why the hell don't I have these commercials?
Right.
I mean, we're a recovery radio station. I'll play them.
No, absolutely. And I think that that's what I was aiming towards too, because you see the commercials, right, of the families being ripped apart and the people struggling and like trying to go to a rehab.
Awful
and
music.
All
You
this
know, I
sad
have
music. It's
to-
like watching a puppy commercial. One of those
Let me-
ASPCA commercials is hard to
Let
get
me ask
through.
you a question. You were almost 3 years, you know what I mean, into your recovery now. When you were coming in off the street to seek treatment, did you have insurance or did you have to go through the Medicaid route?
I'll let you start with that one.
I had insurance.
Did you have the?
So, interesting story here.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, so I'd gone to a few treatment centers in my time. I did have insurance, but the last time I'd gotten clean, and I think this is a big aspect of recovery, right, for me, and I always talk about it, is sponsorship. And I truly believe I had the best sponsor in the world. His name was Bobby. He was a saint. I mean, he was unbelievable. He helped to write the basic text for NA. I mean, he truly was an idol in our area. And he had sponsored me throughout all of my treatment visits, all of my relapses. He knew my parents. I mean, I was very close with this man. And he got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And one day he had looked at me very late in his diagnosis. And, he looked at me and said, I can't keep dealing with you and your family like this. I want you to be here with me and like help me through this. And that for me was enough to go back to my house, lock myself in a room, detox myself, really fight through it. And by the end of that, he got to see me with 10 months clean. I was personally helping him with administering his medications, right? And I was a part of his family. And like his family, his wife, his kids, like saw me holding these liquid morphine bottles and fentanyl and Dilaudid, like injecting him with Dilaudid, and trusted me knowing that I'm just there helping him, right? I'm just doing what it is that was what he wanted when he had that conversation with me. And I'm working a good program, so I'm capable of being there for someone else. So my last go at it didn't involve a treatment center at all. And I do think that that's an important point to talk on because, it's something that's there to help people, but it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be that way. There's multiple paths to recovery.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, there's people that have taken Suboxone for a decade, you know what I mean? Or methadone, or you know what I mean? Whatever other medically assisted treatment you want to look at.
I know I don't know if it's in Jersey, but I know in PA, with how many people are dying, they're actually putting a lot of people on the Suboxone maintenance for like 6 months.
You know what? And that's fine. I'm talking decades. You know what I mean?
Oh, well,
you
yeah, of
can't
course.
put somebody on that. I mean, I know people that have been on it for 10 years, 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think it's like using methadone. You're not really overcoming your problem. You're just replacing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? With something else. Now, if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do. But you're right. There's multiple pathways to treatment. My daughter went to treatments. The last time she detoxed herself, I mean, she went to some meetings, I think most people prefer the AA meetings over the NA meetings, you know what I mean, myself, especially if they're in recovery. I don't know, maybe they're more honest.
Well, it truly is how it's approached in rehab, to be honest with you. When you go in, it's mostly AA focused, and they'll bring in some H&I commitments for NA, and then you kind of get to really get your feel as to which program you identify with the most, but they all have the same end goal, right?
Right.
And with that being said, you never really know who's listening. So if there is someone who's been on methadone for a long time, I would highly advise seeking treatment, because there are some things that coming off of have some serious, health concerns with it. With long-term use of methadone, it's in your bone marrow at that point.
With the long-term use of anything, even with the Suboxone, my daughter told me that detoxing off the Suboxone was harder than detoxing off the heroin.
Yeah, I've heard that. Well, and another thing to kind of your point about treatment pushing different forms of recovery, I know that I've done an H&I commitment at my alma mater, if you will, treatment facility. We were one of the few NA groups that came through, so it was really important for me to bring that back. And I know that my treatment facility was one of the few that really had a steady NA, kind of pushed people steadily towards NA. But again, it really does come down to it. And treatment doesn't always work the same for everybody. I know that when I went through it, the level of surrender is not always there for everybody. And I know when I went through it, I wasn't ready to get totally honest when I went to treatment, and was afraid that my family would find out the extent of my use. So during my intake, just totally made up a ridiculous story about the actual patterns of my usage, and just went to an outpatient treatment facility because I was afraid that if I were to get honest, that my family would find out about it. So my level of surrender was certainly not there, but it ended up working out. Just the same, I had a fantastic counselor.
But it's scary going into that. I mean, you're
Yeah.
like walking into the unknown.
Yeah.
You're already a little bit unstable because, you've been using for however long you've been using it, so you're not trusting anybody. Usually you go off by yourself, right?
I was 19 when I went in, and so I really wasn't, and I had not been living with my family for a long time, and I was just very much used to fending for myself to some extent, so wasn't used to being honest or really trusting anybody. But again, it ended up working out, and I just, to Andrew's point, not everybody goes through treatment. I detoxed myself.
Right. My daughter did
Yeah.
as well. I mean, she's 18 months, in
Right.
recovery right now. But she did treatment, so she knew how to do it. I mean, she knew what she needed to do.
Right.
Absolutely.
And even, I think you said it right at the beginning of your show, relapse. Guess what? It's part of recovery. Hopefully you don't, but if you do, you fall off the horse, you get back on.
You come right back.
know?
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with that.
You have the exposure. You know what your next step
What's
is.
wrong is not recognizing that you fell off the horse. You know what I mean? And going right back at it again, rather than going, damn, I messed up. This is what I got to do to get back on track again.
And you know what the beautiful thing about recovery is too, is that you have a support group, right? So if you fall off track, and sometimes it's hard for people to admit that to themselves, right? Like, oh, I know what I need to do. I need to get back into the rooms. I need to get back into a treatment. Sometimes it's really hard to hold yourself accountable to it, right? You're back in the grip. But when you create that exposure and you go into a meeting and you make friends like Bernadette and Aiden, if I were to stop showing up, I'd be getting calls like, yo, can we help you?
Right.
What can we do here? And just kind of expedite that process of like making sure that, I'm one of those lucky few who get that seat in a rehab again, essentially, right? Because not many people get that luxury.
And that's so much a part of it, the network. I can honestly say I wouldn't be here without the network, and I still, sponsorship, that kind of thing is absolutely important, but I rely on these guys as much as anybody to hold me accountable for my behavior, because even with almost 30 months clean, I still need Andrew and Bernadette to keep me in check. Andrew and I were just having this conversation the other day that so often I'm still ignorant to my patterns of behavior, and whether it's by choice or not is irrelevant. But I do need people to point that out to me and really support network.
I'm just
and
perfect,
meetings.
so now you're right. You're right.
But support network and meetings to me have been more important than my actual treatment. So like going and meeting a support network within treatment.
I totally believe that, because my grandmother had all kinds of sayings, and I'd be like, yeah. As you get older, you're going, damn, grandma was pretty wise.
Appreciate that, yeah.
She had a lot of little sayings. You go with somebody who limps, by the end of the year, you limp. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. And it turns to be true. I'm a firm believer at 61 years old that you are your environment. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So if you're around good, you're good. You know what I mean? If you're around bad, you're going to be bad. I mean, we have mob mentality, right, when we're out doing things.
Absolutely.
And they say stick with the winners too.
Yeah. You know what? And it's hard when you're young and you meet somebody. We're young, we're foolish. We have our aspirations. A lot of testosterone if you're a guy. You know what I mean? And you go off and try and live your life. And it's easy to get steered in the wrong direction sometimes. I have been there and done that. I mean, I'm not perfect in any way. I was a child of the 60s. I can tell you stories, but I will not.
We'll save that for another day.
I wish I had that in front of me. I'd click the fart button.
Yeah. That would have been perfect.
Oh, man. I wasn't even paying attention.
Yeah. I was like, wait, is he going to get it right now? Yep.
I think
Oh my God, that's fucking great.
That's amazing.
I think
You know what? I think I need one of those at my office. So when my employees do something out of line, I could just click one of those
Yes.
buttons.
That is perfect. We should bring it to our home group at the business meeting.
that would be great. That would make things go much
That'll
more
make
smoothly.
Andrew come back to hang out with us.
I think one thing you were talking about that I was interested in going back to earlier was talking about kind of the way the disease of addiction affects families in general, and just talking about kind of the havoc that it wreaks on those families and everybody involved in the recovering addict or not recovering addict's life. The other side of that is kind of the principles of recovery that come to become a part of that family's life, even if just one person's recovery. So I know that for my family at least, and for other people I'm around, that we talk about practicing the principles in all of our affairs. Excuse me. And I know that plays a role in my home life and, work or organizations with school. I try to kind of imbue those groups with the same principles that I practice in recovery. So kind of the hope for those families that have been hurt by the disease of addiction, all that damage that's been done, is that those principles can come into play in other ways. And I know that my mom will even make references to recovery, or, that doesn't sound very spiritual of you sometimes.
Have you been hitting your meetings lately?
Yeah, exactly. And so the hope kind of there is that we can carry what we learn in recovery over to the kind of the family in general.
And the family, like I said, when your loved one is off getting, their help and, their guidance to get started in their recovery, this isn't your time to go on vacation. This is your time to educate yourself. Go to Nar-Anon meetings. These are going to help you understand the disease of addiction. One of the other things we offer is recovery coach classes. We haven't done one here in a while. We really need to do one, but those classes are good because you get a mixture of recovering addicts, parents, clinicians, somebody whose friend was just involved. But when you get all those people in a room for 30 hours for a week,
Right.
they kind of start to understand each other. Like a parent can understand, where that recovering addict was when they were making their decisions. So I just think it really helps.
Huge. We have this annual meeting at our meeting, and it is Nar-Anon and NA together, and you have a speaker from the parent side or the loved one side, and then you have the addict speaker, or the one that's in recovery, and it's so amazing to have them together. And Andrew said that his sponsor that passed away from cancer, his mom actually started the Nar-Anon in our area, and it's been going on for how many years now?
34.
34 years.
That's awesome, man.
And I believe his daughter started children in a meeting for children whose parents are in recovery.
Right.
Yep, she did.
There's all kinds of groups out there with support. You just need to take advantage of it and go look for it. You can go search for this stuff on Google. It's going to pop right up. And you need to get up and go.
Yeah, the resources are endless.
Yeah. So if you want to call in, whether you're an addict or someone who's an addict or any kind of other disease of addiction, I should say, it could be anything, give us a call at 609-241-7103.
The phone lines tonight.
The crickets.
That's perfect. Oh my goodness, I love that. I'm going to get that for my phone.
I'm doing it. After this, I'm doing this. I'm going to use this with my employees. I think it'll be motivating.
We'll be driving home, hitting random buttons.
And one of the luxuries about recovery as well is, and kind of relating back to, never being able to say that I thought I'd be where I am today, is that, I'm able to, even today, I employ people who are in recovery.
Yeah, you're like a business owner. Who would have ever thought that you would be a business owner? Come on.
Yeah,
you couldn't even get a day.
No, there was a time
there was a
when
lot of
Bernadette
way to
saw me
keep
where I could do
tags.
that.
But this is why it's awesome to have him here speaking.
It is.
because
I was
30
so
months
excited.
ago,
Yep.
30 months ago, I did
he
not
had
know what I wanted
nothing,
to
he
do.
had no direction. He didn't know what he was going to do, and now he employs other people.
Yep.
And he's a productive member of society.
And being able to
And other
watch-
addicts.
What a concept!
I know, it really is. And I was able to like see them grow in this. And you know, I only have a few more months, but it truly is like being able to see how they were and like how they are now. And it's like remarkable. You know, like business owner, going to be a lawyer. So if I ever get in trouble, they'll be like, help me out. But like, who would have thought? Like, it truly is incredible.
That was definitely directionless 30 months ago. Not in school, had really no aspirations, but you know, and what Andrew was talking about, being able to employ people in recovery, again, talking about how kind of we can apply those principles.
Yeah, I was
in
going
all
to
of our
say, I deal
affairs.
with those on a daily basis, right? Like honesty, open-mindedness, willingness. I have to approach every situation with my employees, particularly the ones that are in recovery, with a recovery mindset, right? Because I know how I would take some criticism as an addict.
Right.
So I have to be careful with that. On a daily basis, I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where I have to reset myself constantly throughout the day to make sure that what I'm saying can, one, be understood, right? And two, treat them with how I get treated from a Bobby, from a Bernadette, from an Aiden, right? And I truly approach it with that. And I think it makes for like a really good environment. Like I'm thrilled to wake up every day and go do something like that and be able to have those conversations. If I need a reset button, and living in Philadelphia, sometimes my employees and I will just call it for a few hours. We'll walk down to Rittenhouse Square and we'll go make a day meeting, right?
awesome.
Like, who else gets to do that? You know,
It should be like a part of everybody's job.
I do.
That's
Yeah.
true. He does.
But yeah, well, you've retired. Yeah, it truly is.
Life is good. One day we'll be there. One day.
Definitely.
Yeah, but your skills for empathy or your ability to be empathetic really go through the roof, and it's so counter to what you practice when you're using, which is you really have to turn off that empathy switch if you want to continue to do what you do and continue to use at all costs. Live to use to live. And now,
Yeah. You know what the most interesting thing has been, though? And this is something I've noticed over the last few months. I have two very different sets of employees. I have the employees who are,
Not
recovering addicts. And then I have the opposite side of the spectrum, right? The coders, the data scientists, the Ivy League grads. And watching them learn about each other, watching this interaction, because everyone's very open about who they are. Everyone knows who's in recovery, everyone knows who's not. And watching the people who've never been exposed to recovery, they've never been exposed to people who have the mindsets like we have, the addictive tendencies, which you can bring into a work environment, right? And watching them interact with one another has been one of the most interesting things to see. We have some of the most wild conversations during the day. And you know what the beauty of it is that we work in very interesting spaces. It's kind of hard to explain, but one of my recovering employees, came up with this idea to one of the data scientists saying, hey, we do all this data analytics stuff, right? We predict patient outcomes. Let's start predicting patient outcomes for who's going to suffer from an overdose. Right? And be able to go to the health insurers in this space and say, you need to focus on these patients. Based on their trends, there's an overdose coming here. And it's not an easy thing to build, but it's interesting because you have the recovering addicts, right, who don't have the data science background. They're not going to go build these algorithms, but they can come up with that idea. Whereas the kids who are coming from the Ivy League school who majored in this, they're not coming up with the idea to predict an overdose.
Right.
Right? Because they're not exposed to it. But the ones who are exposed to it know that it's a serious problem.
Do you have any stigma that goes from the non-group to the recovery group?
Within my workplace?
Stigma? Yeah.
No, everyone's been very open about it.
That's because
awesome.
that's because he's the
and that-
boss.
You know what? That's
I lay down the
awesome.
law.
Even though we've made great strides, you know what I mean? There's still people that don't believe that this is a disease.
I know, and that really pisses me off.
They
I see stuff on
believe it's a
Facebook.
choice. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, yeah, I woke up, I wanted to be an alcoholic today. Really? I woke up, I wanted to be a heroin addict today.
Have you been seeing the posts lately that there's like some kind of article going around that this person's like still says like, oh, it's not a disease, this, that, and that. I'm like,
moral deficiency.
yes, like literally, I want to like jump through the screen and like I can't even like let it entertain my mind anymore because I get so
You know what?
angry.
There's two kinds of addicts, and pull somebody in off the street, it's, are you a partier or are you, masking your pain from something? You know what I mean? Because they're different. I think it's easier for somebody who's just a party. You're doing it because you like the party is a little bit easier than you're masking some type of a pain. You know what I mean? With your use.
Yeah.
They're two separate things.
They absolutely are. And you know what, to answer that question, one of the most interesting conversations I saw was when someone who's not affiliated with recovery was having a conversation with one of my employees who is in recovery. And it was very brief, but he was curious about it, right? He wanted to know more about it because he kind of had that same mindset, right? Which was, is this really a disease? Like, tell me, like, I'm really curious about this. Tell me more. I want to know. And very simply, my employee who's in recovery looked at him as he's holding this glass of water. And he says, imagine the most thirsty you've ever been in your life. All you needed was that glass of water. And then imagine someone looking at you and telling you, don't drink that. Like, your mind, that mindset that it puts you in of just no, like, you're just gonna, what are you gonna do? You're just gonna shrug it off and say, nope, I'm drinking it. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what your thoughts are on it. I'm drinking it. That's addiction, right? It's you not being able to control yourself. And he was like, that's the most simple I can possibly lay it out to you. And it was amazing to see.
85 million Americans have addictive behaviors, and I believe that number is much higher, much higher.
Very much so.
Absolutely.
And I think as human beings, we have addictive personalities. I mean, half the planet walks around not looking around, they're looking down at their phone. And that cracks me up. No matter where I am, people are just do. I mean, they don't even look up, you know? That's the kind of world we live in today.
Yeah.
People are just blind to what's going on, you know what I mean? So their phones, the internet, Facebook. I mean, we're probably one of the most least productive nations on the planet. You know what I mean? Because everybody's on Facebook posting their shit and selfies at work. And you know what I mean? This is what I had for lunch. And, I don't get any of that, but...
Right. Yeah, I don't really do that.
But
I'm
it's
not really good with
addictive
that.
behavior nonetheless. It's just not harmful addictive behavior. You know?
Right.
The same thing. People have their TV shows. I'm addicted to, and not me, but I'm saying people are addicted to, I got to watch, like my wife, she's got to watch her shows at 9, 7, whatever.
Andrew's addicted to Soul Cycle.
I am definitely addicted to Soul Cycle.
Aiden's addicted
Nothing.
to
You know what?
Oh, nothing?
Snickers.
Nothing?
Absolutely
I
not.
mean, I like the internet. I'm addicted to the internet. You know what I mean? Because even though I've been on it for a long time, I'm 30-something years, I'm still amazed that I can bring the world into my living room. You know what I mean? With a few keystrokes.
Right.
I think what we were talking about earlier, kind of about the two groups of employees at Andrew's work, I think that kind of interaction holds so true for the outside world, and it makes it easier when you have people that are both professionals, doing professional stuff, interacting, and I think so much of the stigma is the junkie. And so when you come into contact with somebody like, let's say, Andrew or myself, that don't look like we just walked off the street, don't look like we were homeless, maybe
Minus the full sleeve of
Maybe
tattoos.
the minor hit,
I just know,
unfortunately.
But mine is
Did you
that.
notice that he didn't say
Right.
my name? So I already looked like...
But minus that, you're absolutely right. No one would know. I mean, when we get someone, new right in off the street or fresh, you know what I mean, from their addiction, and they're just starting their treatment, they don't look healthy. You know what I mean?
Right, and so
but to see them come back, like to look at you guys and go like, wow, you could just look at you and go, look how healthy they are. You know what I mean?
He's
They're like,
healthier.
thanks.
The one thing Ada can admit.
But once you seek recovery, that's all becomes part of it, right? I mean, it's
Right.
not just your mind. I mean, you start to respect your body again and get yourself in shape, and you eat correctly, and all those things make differences.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, they're healthy too, right? Like we were talking about in the very beginning, a lot of people come into recovery and they don't know what they want to do, right? I didn't think I was going to be waking up every day and doing what I do, but I've turned it into a healthy addiction. Do I overwork myself a lot? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And then I have both of them
We can
say yes
speak
right off
for
the bat.
him.
Well,
But
that's what we do, right? When you're passionate about what you do, you probably don't even look at it at work, which is why.
no, you know why? It's great because I feel like I'm helping people on a daily basis, not just in my work environment, but actually like what we do, going out there and trying to like save patients' patients' lives. And it's something that I've somewhat turned into an addiction, right? But I have people like Aiden and
Healthier.
Bernadette to kind of, guide me
It's
through
not
that.
something that's going to helping people isn't going to kill you.
Right.
Yeah, I'll help people all day. I'm fine with that.
Absolutely.
If that's my mission.
And you know what? And it makes you feel good about yourself. Like at the end of the day, you got something done. You know what I mean? And you helped somebody else, even if it's not one person. I mean,
Yep.
I don't get paid for what I do, but I love it.
And
You know
we
what I
just
mean?
can never forget to that, like, our recovery is what gets us these opportunities, and
Exactly.
it gives us this platter of things like school and owning your own business, and I own my own business. Like, we can't not go to meetings, and
It's
we can't not
never
surround ourselves
too
with people.
late to enter recovery.
Exactly.
And you're never too young. You're never too old.
Right.
Is it hard?
It's
Hell
awesome.
yes. Is it worth it? Oh yeah.
The hardest thing sometimes, I think, for me is like it gets tedious after a while.
Recovery?
Like going to like the same meetings all the time.
we
Yeah,
have this
well, that's what I
conversation
tell
all
you.
the time.
Tell you, don't get complacent, right?
Right.
But it's hard. It's hard not to.
Yeah,
to a certain
Andrew was
extent.
giving me shit last week about my complacency. I was like, all right, fine, I'll go. I'll see you there.
But that's the beauty of it. You have the people to call you out on and say,
keep
"Hey,
you
listen,
honest,
we're-
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
we're all getting a little bit complacent. We're making the same meetings. Let's switch this up a little bit."
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you're making new meetings, and you're like, "Whoa,
And you feel like amazing.
it's a whole new recovery." You
feel
started
like
over.
you're
You hit
fresh
that
in
reset
recovery
button.
again. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Going to treatment facilities, doing H&I stuff. We were just talking about our friend going to treatment facilities like that kind of keeps things very fresh. And like just what I was talking about earlier, as far as I find that it's easier for me to carry the message and me to kind of tone down unfortunately have to tone down what recovery looks like to somebody. Because again, I don't necessarily look like I just walked off the street. I have some semblance of an adult life. Same for Andrew. So it's easier for me to kind of carry the message now than I could before. I don't remember how I got on this, and it's easier. And so it's kind of, it's interesting to kind of like keep things fresh for myself and to like introduce people to this, because I can assure you that even 2 years ago, nobody really wanted to know what my perspective on recovery was, because they still weren't sure if I was going to make it. And can't ever take anything for granted or get complacent, but it's definitely a lot easier for me now to kind of talk openly about recovery than I could have before.
Yeah, and you know what? Once you spend some time here, you realize that those reservations that you may have had or those fears that you may have had are not as big as you made them out to be.
The hardest thing to do is to walk into that first meeting.
It really is.
You know what? But do it if you need it. You don't have to say nothing. When they come to you, you can just go, "Nah, I'm good."
Yeah.
And truly, I mean, I think people go in with that pressure that, I'm going to have to talk and introduce me. You don't have to say, "No, here visiting."
Just open
Just
your ears a little
go.
bit. Just listen. But it is interesting though. You see a lot of people, they come in and they're like, "Oh my God, my life's done." Right? Like, I'm never going to be able to do these things again. But that is so far from the truth. I remember, you see people come in, they're like, "I'll never be able to go to concerts again." I've been to like 50 concerts
All the
clean.
time.
Aiden and I went to 2 back-to-back Red Hot Chili Peppers shows together, and it was one of the best things that I've ever done. I've been to Super Bowls clean. I've gone on business dinners clean. I've gone on business trips clean.
Traveled
I've
all
gone on
over the place.
vacations with my fiance clean. I mean, anything is possible here. And sometimes it's hard to see in the beginning, but then you find people with a little bit of time who could say,
I say we
"Just
try
stick
to
with
take
us."
this show to Warped Tour.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you could go
See
to Warped
press
Tour clean.
passes in our
Yeah.
future.
Yeah, absolutely.
I tell my sister all the time, doing drugs was probably one of the best choices I've ever made. At the time, absolutely not, but just the connections you make and then the further freedom that it's allowed me in life. Even if I wasn't an addict, I feel like my horizons have definitely been broadened as a result of coming into recovery.
Absolutely. I mean, even my business partner, who Aiden's met, his name's Casey. He's probably one of the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life. It makes absolutely zero sense to me. I gave him my basic text one night. He read the basic text in a night. Just so we're all clear on this, okay? I've never done that. I'm sure you two have never done that. He read the entire thing. And he came back to me the next morning and was just like, "I think everybody needs this in their life." Right? And it's just true, right?
It's
So
so
yeah, to a
true.
certain extent, I'm grateful too.
And it's the same thing with the recovery coach classes. Even though we apply it to addiction, you can apply it to anything in life.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? To help make yourself successful. And I think that's what a lot of people, slowly start to realize is even if you're going to AA and NA or any of those meetings,
Right.
your aha moment comes at some point in time,
I don't
Yeah,
even
yes, it
remember
does.
that happening. I'm sure it happened somewhere along the
I
way.
remember
but
you
I don't
sharing about,
remember.
he's like, "I think the pink cloud's fading."
Me?
Yeah.
I don't even remember.
It was a little while
Honestly.
ago.
The pink cloud.
There's
nice-
probably been a couple of those.
It's a nice little ride. And you know what? The one thing Bobby always told me, and you always hear it too, was she was like, make sure you got your pink parachute. And you know, most of the time I didn't, right? And that's why I collected countless white key tags. But then there comes a time where you find yourself back on that cloud and you're like, I'm gonna broaden my base here, right? I'm gonna build a support group. I'm gonna make meetings. I'm gonna call people, and I'm gonna have that parachute when that cloud goes away.
And here we are too. And like Bobby was big on the broader the base, the higher the freedom. Like I think he was one of the first people that actually explained it in a way I understood it. Like,
Our symbol.
Oh, yeah. Like, and who would have thought like I never got it. I didn't understand it, but like I finally did. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you gonna push right now? I'm like waiting for.
Thank you for playing. Next contestant.
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to start taking an iPad from him.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I definitely don't. The pink cloud, I think there's definitely been a couple. Because I was thinking about this actually on the way to see you earlier, Bernadette. Just the cyclical nature of recovery, and it's such that it's an ebb and flow process, and I don't know that there's ever been a peak, and then it's just plateaued from there. I would say there's absolutely all sorts of up and downs. And the hope is that there's always another kind of peak around the corner. But I've definitely had more than one pink cloud moment, more than one aha moment, and a number of downward moments too. But the hope is you stay clean and, there's more around the corner.
Yeah, and you don't get clean and immediately have a pink cloud. I mean, when I got clean, my sponsor was dying. So my pink cloud came after essentially his death. And me realizing like, whoa, I got clean for somebody, right? But I'm staying clean today for myself. And then that's kind of like when my pink cloud started a little bit, and rode that for all I could.
Yeah, there's tons of perspective shifts, I think, throughout recovery, and I think even at tough moments, I think I've stayed clean for people other than myself. At the end of the day, it's for me, but there's been times when it's tough, when it's just easier to be like staying clean for my family or whomever.
But when you're not doing it for yourself is where you have, you know what I mean, the more chances for relapse.
Oh, it's usually when I'm not doing well, is that it
But I mean,
changes.
when you're doing it for you and you make that decision, I think that means more. I mean, I smoked cigarettes for 43 years. That was a hard addiction to quit, man.
That's why he has mints over there.
But
I'm not there yet. I'll get there.
And like anything, it's mind over matter. I can't sit here and go, God, I wish I had a cigarette. I wish I had a cigarette. I wish I had a cigarette, because you're going to end up having a cigarette. You know what I mean? You can't sit there and go, wow, I wish I had a line. I wish I had this. Like, you know what I mean? You're going to end up going to watch what you wish for, right?
You know, and I think this is one of the most important things about recovery. It's okay to have the thought, right? It's normal for us as
natural.
addicts to have the thought. We're drug addicts, right? We're just recovering drug addicts. So those thoughts are going to come. You're always going to think about that line, that hit, that prick, whatever it is.
Scary at
Whatever
first,
your
for
addiction is, you're always going to think of it. It's not your fault for having the thought, but it's your fault for continuing to entertain it and not take the steps that you're taught, which is call somebody, make that meeting, share about it.
I tried to quit smoking for a long, long time. I mean, to the point that when I finally got to the point where I was going through the motions, like I didn't even enjoy it, you know what I mean, anymore. It was easy to just throw them down. There was no weaning, there was no mints, there was no...
Oh, I need the mint.
There was no gum. There was no. I mean, I was putting the nicotine patches on and smoking. I mean,
Done that.
I think everyone
I
has.
think we've done that.
Yeah.
so it's mind over matter. You know what I mean? Even as simple as a thing as you would think quitting cigarettes would be, is a struggling addiction to try and quit. Nevertheless, a harmful opioid of some sort, whether it be heroin or, an OxyContin that you
you
took.
become chemically dependent on that because you feel coming off that the way your body feels and how sick and like literally you feel like you're dying. You literally exactly.
Yeah, use the buzzer on her now.
Darn it.
I think if there's ever a time to use that
It's
on the
when I almost
radio,
do
is when
that.
you're talking about how sick you get when you don't realize how deep you're into it.
Right.
Yep. It's awful. And for me, I can't forget that last day. And I can't forget what brought me into, thankfully, recovery because I no, I would not be alive right now.
You know what? Thinking back on that now, though, is probably helpful to you because you're like,
I need
don't
to.
want to go back
Exactly.
to
Yep.
that.
I
No,
have to
exactly.
remember that.
I shared about this not too long ago. I do not remember what my last high was. I just don't, because my life became so boring and so meaningless,
just
and I was
gonna say
living
that.
in this animalistic level in my head in real life, right? I don't remember that. But what I do remember is I remember my first day detoxing. And I remember my second, and I remember it all the way up until day 26, still crawling in my skin, right? Not wanting to go back to that, sweating and chills, and I don't lose sight of that for a second.
I have my daughter's boyfriend, who's in Oregon still, which is where I was out there, when we did our last show. I know people, all over the country, so I was able to, at least offer him somebody who could help him there.
Right.
But he's detoxing himself. And he's like, hey, Dad, I'm on day 9 and I feel great today. And I'm just saying to myself, like, tomorrow you're probably going to feel like you got hit with a freaking sledgehammer. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to bust your bubble.
Right.
And he absolutely was.
Even in recovery for years, there's days where I feel like I was hit by a bus.
Yep. And
There's
that's
days
how
I don't
he
want to
feels.
get out of bed.
I was like, you've been using opioids for damn near 20 years. Do you really think that it's all going to go away in 9 days or 10 days or 14 days? I mean, it takes time, for your body to shed itself of all.
It takes more than that, too. You can be clean for a year and a half, and all of a sudden you'll get post-acute withdrawal, and next thing you know, you feel sick again, and that's why you got to have that support group. That's why you got to be there, so you can call people and say, yo, as we heard the other night in a meeting on Monday, you spend all these years walking in the forest, you're not going to walk out in 6 months.
That was a good one.
That's a great way to look. That's a great way to look at it. You could just take one thing away from a meeting like that, and you realize, like, it's not that simple. It does take time.
The hardest thing for someone to do is to dial 10 digits.
609-241-7103. Is that 10?
Oh, that'd be nice.
No, instead we get crickets.
That's all right. At least they could re-listen.
Call in, talk to us, 609-241-7103. Let us know you're there.
Like what Andrew was talking about earlier, I was actually thinking the same exact thing, that I don't remember what the last day of my using was like, but I do remember going through treatment. I do remember the first meeting and just how outside of my skin, how uncomfortable I felt because I was no longer using drugs, and I wasn't used to from like 13 on, wasn't used to anything like that. And I remember I lost $60 at my first meeting, fell out of my pocket, and I was like, those dirty junkies took my money. I'm never going back. This is ridiculous.
That's where that $60 came from.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't remember it, but I do try to keep in mind how uncomfortable I felt and just how different I feel in my own skin now. And like you were talking about your daughter, seeing how the person that she is now, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers,
Yeah.
how she is now. And that's how I feel now, kind of like who you are when you're a little kid, happy, joyous, and free.
Right.
And I just try to remember how terribly uncomfortable I was for a long time.
Right.
That keeps it fresh.
But you guys coming in and talking tonight, hopefully it's going to give somebody hope that, you know what I mean? There's hope going through recovery. It's not
Right.
easy. It's probably one of the hardest things you'll ever go through, but it's life-changing. I mean, it is positively life-changing.
And no doubt that it's definitely going to help someone. And even if someone's not, actively wanting to call in, but I know it's helped me in general too, because like these are people that are in my recovery network that like call me out on my stuff when I might not be feeling well or having a good day, because sometimes it's hard to want to get vulnerable and like be on a radio and like on, a camera and like just be raw. And, they kept me just as much as accountable as I kept them. It's great.
And that's what you need to do. You know what I mean? Everybody needs somebody to help keep them accountable.
Yep.
Because we are weak-minded persons, human beings that walk this planet. And we should be there to help each other.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be people in the program too. It's as you said earlier, it's the people you surround yourself with. You surround yourself with good people and you're going to get good things.
Yep, and it's a positive experience, right?
It is. And I remember I was on a business trip in Florida, and my business partner could tell I was really in my head, and he drove me to a meeting. I didn't even know where we were going, and he just pulled up and he said, enjoy the hour and I'll see you when you're done. And you know what? It's just a little thing like that just goes, this goes well beyond recovery and the people in recovery. it's truly something that I'm excited for you about tomorrow too, because it's people like Christy who are going to be able to get this message out there and say, this goes well beyond the people who are just walking into those rooms.
Right.
And I really like that he's taken the time to actually educate himself more about
Absolutely.
the whole recovery process. I mean, he's talking to people that are in recovery. He's talking to the clinicians. He's talking to the mom and pop, parent organizations that are, there to offer help. I mean, Philadelphia, you got Angels in Motion, they're walking
Yes.
the streets in Kensington,
Heard some
handing out
good stories.
sandwiches and coats.
And hitting people
God
with
bless
Narcan.
those
Hitting people
people.
with
Pop-Tarts.
Narcan.
Whatever it is, but you know what? Nobody's turning them down. You
Right.
know what I mean? And that's what's wrong today. People put their head down and walk past you rather than, you know what I mean? Here, let me get you something. I tell a lot of parents because they feel like they're enabling. They called me and they said they're hungry. Great, have a pizza delivered to the corner that they're on. You know what I mean? Just don't give them the money.
Exactly.
You know
I was
what
going to
mean?
say, that's not enabling. It
Oh, but I
just-
feel bad because, they don't have any place to live. Buy him a hotel room and go here, go to this hotel, tell the guy who you are, and they'll hand you a key.
Right.
That's not enabling. That's helping your loved one. You know what I mean? Get through. If you feel that guilty about them being on the street or being not having a meal or not having a coat, then you can fix that. It's not enabling to help somebody.
Right.
It's enabling to hand them cash when you know what they're going to go do with that money. It's like handing that guy standing, on the corner of Route 1 when you get off of Route 1 in Trenton with the sign, hey, I need whiskey. You know what he's going to go do with the money. I mean, he's telling you in his sign what he's going to go
Yeah,
do.
to a certain extent, though, I think there are exceptions to that as well. I remember I was driving back from work one day, right by 30th Street Station, and there was the same individual that I'd seen for, I guess, 4 weeks at the time, and he would always walk past my car, and I never gave him anything. And then one day I rolled down my window, and I go to give him $5. I know exactly where the money's going, right? I already know that. And he looks into the car, and he's like, Andrew? And I realized it was a kid I knew from high school for years. And I had driven by this kid this goes to show you what addiction can do to you, because I did not recognize the kid for the life of me until I actually looked into his eyes. And I looked at him and I gave him the $5 and I did say, I know exactly where this is going, but I hope that this last use is going to be what gets you back, right? Because I had just seen you at a meeting, a year ago, 2 years ago. And now he's clean and in Florida. And it's something like that where it's like, yes, okay, it is enabling to a certain extent, but you can attach some hope to that and say,
I don't see that as enabling. I see that as a decent human being offering someone some hope, and you know what I mean? There's nothing bad about that. I mean, maybe that would be his aha moment. People
Right.
say, how come you continue and continue, and you get a kid and he's in a treatment 30 times? Because maybe 31 will be his aha moment. We're not going to give up on you. We don't give up on you.
no, not at all.
I was actually, I was just in Chicago and I was walking out of my hotel to go to a meeting. This was not 2 weeks ago, like 10 days ago. And walked outside my hotel and a gentleman that was homeless asked me for a cigarette. I offered him a cigarette and he asked if I had any money. I said, no, I'm actually, and he looked a little worse for wear, and I said, I'm actually on my way to a meeting. And he asked what kind, so I told him it was an NA meeting, and he said, oh, okay, where's it at? I probably should hit one sometime this week. So I didn't have a meeting list on me, but I
Wow.
showed him my phone. I was like, here are the days that the meetings are.
Right.
Here, you might not want to come tonight. He was a little roughed up, but, I do think there's some level of, like I was talking about earlier, that I think we're able to carry a level of empathy that you don't often see every day.
Yeah, and people are carrying it in different ways too. I'm going to something pretty interesting tomorrow. I had been doing some research on, I'm really into artwork and photography, and I was telling Aiden about this, and I had found this one artist in Philadelphia. He's not an addict, but he spent 5 years doing a project of just driving down to Kensington, interviewing addicts on the street, and taking like a very still portrait of them, which takes like a long time to process, right? You have to get them to stand there and be still for minutes upon minutes, which for an addict is hard in that setting, and actually get to know them. So I ended up going and seeing that. I emailed him and I said, your work speaks to me, right? Because I see myself in their eyes, of these people that you took the pictures of. And I was fortunate enough for him to say, come take a look at my studio. And I did, and I ended up getting a few portraits from him. But
It seriously is amazing.
yeah, and I'm going to this gallery tomorrow of his opening of a book of all these pictures of addicts and their audio interviews and what they wrote in his journal. And this is a guy who's not affiliated with recovery at all. He's not even an addict. He just did this as a project when he was in Drexel like 15 years ago. And, it's not even us that's bringing the message anymore. And I said, why do you want to do this? Right? Like, no one does this. You will not find me when I was using, I would not be on the street finding someone who's like, hey, can I talk to you
Right.
for 5 minutes? Like, people are going out of their way to say, I want to give these people a voice. Let's end this stigma, and let's give this person that normally people would turn their head away from and just walk past them and say, I want to hear your story.
Right.
Tell me why you're here. How can I help? Right? Because maybe taking your picture is what can help you today. Knowing that someone cares and wants to talk to you and hear you for you.
Right. See, that is incredible. And yeah, he does have beautiful work. But we are out of time, so I want to say one of my little
Good night, everybody.
I want to say one of my little sayings before we go. So it's never let go of hope. One day you will see that it has finally come together. What you have always wished for has finally come to be. You will look back and laugh at what has passed, and you'll ask yourself, how did I get through all that? So I'm Bernadette, and I want to thank Aiden and Andrew for being
you for
here,
having us.
Thank you.
and Art for doing all the mechanical work.
Thanks for coming, guys.
And that's it. We're out. See you next week.